For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show with Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, the undefeated Winnipeg Jets, I might add, 4-0. After their convincing victory last night over an overmatched San Jose Sharks team. Gentlemen, great to see you both on this Saturday morning. Big thanks to the good folks at Play Now, of course. They're the presenting sponsor here of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show and the Illegal Curve post-game show. Gentlemen, it's been less than 12 hours since we last got together, but it's nice to see you both on this Saturday morning. Red and orange day for us at Illegal Curve, apparently.
Those are two great colors. And boys, the dream is alive. The dream is alive. The Jets can still go 82-0. It's pretty incredible to think that the Jets have never gone 4-0 in 1.0 or 2.0 history. It just shows you how good of a start that is, right? But look, even though the Sharks scored 3 goals, that was as dominant a performance that you could really ask for last night. So we're going to get into it here. Obviously, the Nemesnikov line got off the schneid. Nice to see. What did they have, 10 or 11 combined points? Nick Ehlers, his best game of the year, right? So excited.
Thanks to Richie.
Yeah,
yes,
thanks to Richie,
the Bauer rep.
Yep,
by the way, Richie, if you're listening and you want to, grease us with a little bit of Bauer merchandise, you can feel free to get in touch with us. We are not unwilling to shill as we for free products as well.
Well, Richie's
influencers.
Richie and friends have been all over our Instagram for that post that I posted on the Illegal Curve Instagram, and Richie's friends are saying that Richie is going to be insufferable to play hockey with and to be around in general after that big shutout. So, yeah.
Well, if anybody knows anything about insufferable, it's us at Illegal Curve. So we'd fit in very well with Richie and friends in that case. The numbers, Dave Minuk, through 4 games speak for themselves. Undefeated, of course. That puts the Jets with a winning percentage of 1,000. That's pretty good. Top in the NHL in goal differential at plus 13. You look at the Jets, on the backs of last night's performance, now have 7 players averaging a point per game. I'm saying all these stats, folks, tongue in cheek. It's very early, but the numbers are pretty impressive. The power play is the best power play in the NHL.
And in history.
And in history, yes, of course. A 50% success rate, and the penalty kill not too far behind, 8th in the NHL right now at an 85.7% rate. So things clicking on all cylinders, firing on all cylinders for the Jets early in this season, Dave Minuk.
Yeah, and I think the 2 things that I'm going to take away from there, because clearly the undefeated thing and even the goal differential is pretty impressive right now, but it's the special teams for me. And it's the power play and the penalty kill. And sure, they gave up a power play goal yesterday, but I think that the key for this Jets club is that return. We're not seeing a ton of creation at 5-on-5, obviously more yesterday than we did in the previous 3 games.
Dave, that's because the Jets were on the power play for half the game last night.
Well, it's interesting because that's one of the things that Scott O'Neill talked about was that, he said, will it be a game that looks like there's going to be a lot of power plays? And that's what it ended up being.
And the power plays were largely because the Jets controlled the play and the Sharks had no other alternative but to take penalties to try and slow them down.
Yeah, and it, like I said, we heard from Dean Chenoweth, the PK coach this week, and he just talked about the momentum that they feel like. It's just his philosophy. He talked about the penalty kill philosophy, and I'm just saying that he said it's going to take a bit of time because it's more aggressive than what this team has employed in the past. Which we've talked about how sometimes they're very passive both on the power play and on the penalty kill. So they're going to be a more aggressive team in that regard and a quicker team. And that probably works to their strength. So that's to me is probably a good idea. And so far, early, obviously, and level of competition needs to be taken into account. Chicago, San Jose, even Minnesota to a certain degree. So you have to factor all those things in, of course, but you want to see that the team is having success because one, it's always easier as once you've kind of gotten that start to kind of try and maintain that to a certain degree. You're not going to maintain 40% on the power play and a pretty much perfect penalty kill.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is that you're going to be able to, ride that to a certain degree. You're going to feel good. Your power play is both units are going to feel good about themselves. The penalty kill, both those units are going to feel good about themselves. And to me, that really is what is key, because you can bring that into the season. And that's one of the areas we talked about for the majority of last year, which this team, 52 wins, 110 points, but their special teams were abysmal. Now, even if you don't get to that 110 point, I mean, let's be realistic. The Jets are going to finish with 164 points. But even if you don't get Ezzy to that, that same mark in terms of wins and points, if your special teams are top 10, that's going to be very good for this Jets team moving forward.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the special teams have been good early on, and we're throwing out a lot of numbers here, and we talked about this last night on the postgame show. It's really remarkable that the Nemesnikov line had 100% Corsi for, and something that wasn't really talked about, but I guess I'm going to talk about it here, is the Nemesnikov line barely had more ice time than the fourth line, and this is courtesy of Garrett Hole here in his 5-hole newsletter that I'm subscriber to. And the other thing too is the Scheifele line actually didn't have a very good night at even strength. So that showed Drew, I know you're already frowning here.
I mean, I think there's value. There's definitely value in analytics, but to everything that happened from that first period on yesterday, or that second period on yesterday, is almost has to be thrown out. I mean, it's just, the score effects are so dramatic in that game. It's so one-sided. Look, I get it. And I saw those numbers and I was concerned about them, at first glance as well, particularly the performance at 5-on-5 from the Scheifele, Velarde, and Connor line. But that game is such an anomaly that I just don't think you can read that much into it, even from and I say that from as impressive as the Perfetti's line performance was as well. It's just, I mean, it was such a men against boys performance last night that I don't know how much value, and I think even Scott Arneal alluded to it in his post-game comments. I don't know how much value you can find in the last 40 minutes of that game, because it was basically already over as soon as Kyle Connor scored, early in that second period.
I think you could argue that the game was over even before that. I think the game was over, when Ehlers scored his second goal and the Jets were up 3-1, right? So, I was going to finish my point, Drew. You didn't. Yes. You interrupted me.
Sorry,
you didn't even let me
ahead.
put context to the numbers. I just mentioned the numbers. I didn't even make a point there, but the point I was trying to make is that the Nemesnikov line, coupled with the power play, was so dominant that you didn't even notice those things. That's what I was going to say. Nobody's going to remember those things from that game, and nobody was paying attention really, aside from maybe Garrett Hole and I, to those numbers. But I think there's no doubt that early on the power play has been a big story. And also the story has been that the Jets have not been reliant on one or two lines, right? You go back to the season opener against the Oilers, it was all the Lowry line. And then obviously, Scheifele and Connor got some goals on the power play. And, the Jets just continue to pile up goals. And the goal totals were actually a little bit lower when you consider they only scored a couple of goals against Chicago and Minnesota, right? So really last night was just all about, I think, that Nemesnikov line getting going. And yeah, you're right, Drew. I mean, that line isn't going to have 100%. They're not going to outscore. They're not going to outshoot their opposition 11-0 every game. The Sharks are a terrible defensive team. The goaltending is bad. Even though, like we talked about, you bring in a guy like Cody Ceci on the back end. I mean, and Matt Benning, I think he was there last year, but it's just not a very good team. And the Jets took advantage of it, and that's what they're going to do. You put a weak opponent in front of the Jets, they should beat them 8-3.
You're right. Exactly right. And that's, I think, to me, the takeaway from the game of last night is that the Jets went out there and they didn't toy with their opponent. They didn't, play down to their opponent's level. They just went and they said, okay, this shouldn't be competitive, and it won't be competitive. We're just going to end it real early and real quick. And that's certainly, I think, a very good sign from the Jets, is that there's no, there's no selfishness. There's no disrespecting the game. It's let's just go, let's perform, let's win, let's have an easy win. Because we know that in the course of an 82 game season, Dave, it gets to be a grind. and it gets to be hard. And it's hard to win oftentimes in the NHL, and it's a struggle through 60 minutes. So that when you can have a performance like this, where you go out and you end the game after 20 minutes, for all intents and purposes, it feels pretty good in the room. It allows the coaching staff to just sort of keep cycling guys through. You don't have to worry about line matching. You don't have to worry about who's out there against which opponents. You just, okay, next line over the boards, next line over the boards, next line over the boards, because you know that by and large you're going to be, after 20 minutes, the game's over and you're going to win the majority of the rest of your minutes.
Yeah, and to the thought you just had, I would concur, right? The idea is that, Scott O'Neill can thereafter use guys, freely, and he doesn't really have to be worried about matching. He doesn't have to worry. He still wants to play his game. He still wants to implement the game plan that they created, ahead of the hockey game, right? But at the end of the day, you want to know that, as you said, Drew, this is something the Jets didn't do last year. They weren't able to, like, how many times did the Jets have tough games against Chicago, who was a much worse team last year than they are this year, or against San Jose even? So you had, and obviously the San Jose games, especially largely were goaltender related, but I'm just saying that the Jets to do that to that, I don't think it requires a lot of analysis. We did that last night on the show, and ultimately, this is not a powerhouse team. So you beat up a doormat, which is kind of what you do to doormats, right? And I guess.
And by the way, having Macklin, Celebrini, and Will Smith in the game would not have changed anything.
It would have given them more talent and more skill that you'd have to be aware of, but the Jets were still going to be the better of the two teams last night on paper, certainly.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying though is that you did what you needed to do in the hockey game. Your special teams continued to work well, and more importantly, you got that Nemesnikov line going. That to me was the biggest. And again, was it because it was against the Sharks? Was the comments that we had heard from Nikolai Ehlers earlier that day, that his line had spent, he loves playing with those guys. They'd spent time, watching video, working in practice. If they're going up against Dallas, does that line, I don't suspect they have the same Corsi numbers, and I don't suspect that, the stat line necessarily looks the same. But my point is that, do they have that sort of good feeling? That's nice by Spency, but like
say it for the podcast.
Yeah, they were definitely lacking the Celebrini. Very nice, Spency, who's also now known as God's gift to the YouTube chat.
First of all, he appointed himself as God's gift to YouTube
Self-appointed.
Self-appointed. Yes. I'm not sure about how that totally
That's not
works.
true. God appointed him the gift to the YouTube chat.
Pretty sure it's sacrilegious to be making those kinds of comments, but that's okay.
Anyways, the fact of the matter is that
sacrilegious. What did you say?
That's a different. No, that was my French toast this morning.
But anyways, the point is that this is you were able to get out of the hockey game what you needed to get out of that hockey game, which is 2 points and a lot of good feelings.
That's a good way to put it.
And again, like I said, that second line, the one we'd been wanting to see what they were going to be able to do, what they're going to be able to put it together. They did it yesterday. That's what you want to see. And now, as we've talked about, and some folks saying in the chat, now you put that game behind you and you focus on the next one.
Well, so let's talk about moving forward, and we'll get deeper into the Penguins game a little bit later on in the show, but just a general look at the schedule as we, in the lead up to last night's game, there's a lot of talk that it's every second night, for the next, number of weeks. And you look at it, I mean, I think the next time the Jets have a 2-day break between games isn't until after the game against the Florida Panthers. They have that home and home against the Panthers. So on Tuesday, November 19th, they play against the Panthers. I'm missing one. After they play Dallas on a Saturday night, then they have 2 days off, and then it's back to 2 in a row.
Did Drew just reference a game on November 19th?
Well, that's what the schedule is. Every
October 19th.
The schedule is every second day. I mean, that's so the Jets are, into a bit of a grind, as they were talking about. Now, there's not a back-to-back in here until the 22nd and 23rd of November. But, after that 4-day break that they had last week, it is every second game. So it's every second day the Jets are going to be playing. It's easy to schedule in your brains as to when the Illegal Curve post-game show will be. It's the next night if it's not that night. So it's pretty straightforward at that point in time.
They have 7 games in the next 13 days.
Well, there you go.
Including last night's game. That's as a game every 2 days as you get, because that's literally what they have, right?
Right.
So it's a tough stretch, and it was kind of weird, right? Like we talked about it a little bit. Like you're not used to seeing a 4-day break in mid-October, right? Like it's just every team is going to have these weird, and also we should mention, right, with the Four Nations tournament in February, that you're going to see kind of like every year we talk about, these weird parts of the schedule, Drew, but like this year it's going to be even more condensed and weirder, right? So yeah, there's going to be lots of hockey, but that just means lots of post-game shows and we get to hang out with Spency and the crew.
There you go. It's great that we have all those post-game shows, but the Jets sort of need to be they need to take that opportunity, and then after the 4-day break, they need to now sort of recalibrate themselves. It's great start to the season. You can't take anything away from them. 4-0. I think if you had asked anybody about the start to this Jets season, you would have said, okay, yeah, you got to make some hay. You got some weaker opponents, especially after the game against Edmonton. You have some weaker opponents that are coming to Winnipeg to play against the Jets. Now let's see how they do in those games. Well, they've acquitted themselves excellently. We know that. We can see that. And you got the Penguins on Sunday, again, a team that is got some great talents, of course, in Crosby and Malkin, and both of whom had those milestone nights earlier this week. But after that,
isn't Malkin leading the league in points, right? I think close.
He is.
Yeah, he's got 11 points in 6 games. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, looks like they've found the fountain of youth.
I mean, he's played more games. Somehow Carolina's only played 3 games. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
They had that postponed.
They postponed.
Well, no, I know, but Carolina's only played 3 games, and I think the Devils are up to 7 or 8. It's just kind of weird to have that disparity. And obviously, the Devils started against the Sabres in Prague, but just kind of, yeah, you're right. I mean, Carolina did have the games postponed, but and we should factor that in, that Pittsburgh's played 6 games and the Jets have only played 4, right? So, but I mean, look, they score a lot of goals, but they give up a lot of goals.
Yeah, more than anybody, I think, Ezzy.
Yeah, so I mean, the Jets should be able to continue to pile up the goals, and it'll probably be Bloomquist in net as opposed to Tristan Jarry is really struggling. Like we talked about Mackenzie Blackwood. I think Jarry was injured too, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe he's just sitting right now. But Mackenzie Blackwood really struggled last night. Tristan Jarry is a guy who, what did he get, a 5 or 6 year deal, guys? And they're kind of starting to wonder, like, what's the future of Jarry in Pittsburgh? So we'll wait and see what happens there. Because I think Bloomquist started last night, didn't he?
I think that sounds right. I'm pretty sure that Jarry did get the night off last night. I mean, he's got his save percentage is .836 and a goals against average of 5.47. So he definitely needs a little bit of time away.
Yeah. Is that good?
No, it's not great.
By the way, for the record, I misspoke. Pittsburgh has not given up the most goals in the league. That'd be Colorado at 28.
Right. And Pittsburgh's second.
You're talking about big win Colorado last night.
Yeah, big win, having to come back against Anaheim.
Yeah. The Penguins have given up 25 goals. So if you look at it on a goals, I mean, they're giving up more than 4 goals a game. No, it's not good. I know, I know it's not. But the Jets need to, again, take advantage of that. They've had the successful homestand. They want to continue that successful homestand and wrap it up with a perfect record on home ice before they have to hit the road for the 3 where they go against the St. Louis Blues, the Seattle Kraken, and then the Calgary Flames. So, but the Jets, my point is, they have to keep the good momentum going. They've done a lot of good things so far early this year. And that was a question, is how is this team going to pick up with a new head coach, albeit one with a lot of familiarity in Scott Arniel, one who was behind the bench, last year in this associate role or assistant role and interim head coach for a couple of times while Rick Bowness was away. But the Jets need to sort of continue to make hay that they've made in October and November the last couple of years, because those solid starts to the season have propelled them into the playoffs for the last couple of seasons.
No, I don't think there's any question. And I think that's one of the things that we've talked about for years on this variety of shows, whether it's a Saturday morning show or a post-game show, is how important and impactful these early season games are for the Winnipeg Jets. So if you're able to do what they've done, which they've never done before, which is get to start off with 8 points out of 8 opportunities for 8 point potential points, and they got 100%. That's significant, because it'll help when you have that lull. But as Vlad Nemestikov, touched on yesterday, this is one of those things that, listen, they had that luxury. They no longer have it. And I think the positive for the Jets, regardless of outcome, but for the next game or two, but I think the positive for the Jets is that they're feeling really good about a lot of different things. Even though Connor Hellebuck didn't have a strongest night, he's looked no different. And I'm sure there's a lot going on with him yesterday, right? As with the celebration, he is obviously very, because it's interesting to hear him talk, right? He talked about celebrating his achievements, but with the fans in Winnipeg. And you could see that rousing ovation that he got was had a played a role kind of impacting him. And I'm not saying in a negative way. I'm just saying, you could see just from the way he was reacting, that, you know, he really was appreciative of the, I guess, adulation that he was receiving from the crowd.
Jets fans are not shy, Dave, to let Hellebuck know how much they love him, and you know he appreciates it, right? Like,
right.
It goes back to what we talked about when Scheifele and Hellebuck signed, right? Like, Hellebuck could have chosen to go elsewhere. He wanted to be here, right? And he's here. He's got his second Vezina, and he's obviously working on his third Vezina. But I mean,
more importantly, his first Stanley Cup.
Well, yeah, obviously, you know, that's what the ultimate goal is for the Jets and most teams, not the San Jose Sharks. Sorry, guys, you're not winning the cup this year. But I mean, you could listen to Hellebuck. At least I could listen to Hellebuck talk all the time when he's especially referencing how much he loves playing in here with his teammates and everything like that. And that's one thing too that you're seeing. Like, obviously, winning helps that, Dave. And sorry, I don't mean to steal your thunder here, but yeah, I mean, like, the Jets, they're having fun. Like, they're winning games and they're having fun, and they're really appreciative of how well Hellebuck is playing behind them.
Yeah, and just I agree with you, and the having fun is a very key factor. And I don't remember who said that, but one of the guys, I think it was Scott O'Neill, had referenced that yesterday or the day before, just about them having fun. But more importantly is that they're building good habits, and again, the 5-on-5 play through the first 3 games is something that you want to see improved upon. But to me, the most critical factor was the special teams, and the penalty kill was not good last year, to put it mildly. And the power play had stretches where it was better and improved a little bit, but it wasn't consistent.
By the way, what happened to Scheifele and Connor on the PK? Nobody's talking about that.
That was a training camp storyline.
Who called that? Who called that? This guy.
There you go. Well, once in a blue moon, you got something right. Congratulations.
The blind squirrel found the nuts. But yeah. I think the key for Winnipeg is that you're gonna hold on to those really positive elements that you've created in the first, couple of weeks of the schedule, or however long it's been. I can't remember when our first game was. Was it 10 days ago? Was it October 9th? I think it was the first game.
Yeah, the Wednesday. So that's right.
It's only been 10 days. It feels we've already been a lifetime, but it's only 10 days in. And but no, this is one of those situations where you've been able to, and what we should mention, the Fleury and Miller pairing has worked well, and that's one thing that Scott O'Neill's talked about. So
but Fleury struggled a little bit last night, though, Dave.
Oh, a little bit, but especially
coughing the puck up.
Yeah, but I think what it comes down to, though, is that you've got a team that is created those elements, Drew, to your point, that you should, even in a condensed schedule, be able to say, listen, our power play is not going to change. The structure is not going to change. The penalty kill, like, those guys have learned that it works. Even if it's only 4 games in, they're seeing the results are there. It's hard to coach someone and say, trust me, it will get there. But now these guys have already had that success. So they're going to have a lot more trust in, the Davis Payne and Dean Shinway's systems. And obviously Scott O'Neill's had an impact as well. But those systems, and I think that, to me, is going to be a critical factor moving forward in the next 20 games or whatever it's going to be.
I think what was so important for the Jets, at least to start this year, is to see how they were going to build upon the structure that was put in place last year. And that was, I think, a big question. Anytime you have a new coach behind the bench, again, albeit one with the familiarity that they have with Scott O'Neill, the question is largely going to be, how is the team going to respond? How is the team going to, pick up where they left off in terms of the good habits? And how do they flush some of those bad habits and start to rebuild them? And so far, Ezzy, I would say that the jury is definitely come back with a positive verdict on the Jets building on that. I mean, you look at 5-on-5 goals against. The Jets have given up 4 5-on-5 goals against so far this year. And I mean, and you'll take that every single day of the week. That's if those are the, like, you want to be giving up 1 even strength goal or less per game. You're going to win games. You're going to win the majority of your games if you're giving up 1 even strength goal a game, especially when the penalty kill is no longer atrocious.
And I think, boys, like, you start off that game against Edmonton. We talked about it. I mean, you dream about those types of season opening, I should say, victories on the road, right? Like 6-0. Like, you really can't ask for much better than that unless you're asking for, I guess, 7-0. But I mean, the point is they were dominant and they shut down McDavid and Draisaitl and company. Right. And yeah, the games against Chicago and Minnesota, there were, like we talked about, like Drew and I did the post-game show after Chicago, and there was definitely some, Scott O'Neill called it spacey moments in that game. And against Minnesota, that was tight checking. And usually those games are 1-goal games. But then you have an opponent after having 4 days off, and you absolutely stomp on their throats. And that's what you like to see. So you've seen 2 dominant victories out of 4, and then you've seen a couple where, yeah, you could have lost a point in overtime, but you didn't. You found a way to get that extra point in overtime. So, I mean, you're a perfect 4 for 4, and it hasn't been perfect. But I think what you're liking is the fact that not only are the special teams clicking and you're getting contributions from all 4 lines. Like, again, the 4th line was really good last night. We talked about Alex Iafallo chipped in 2 assists. One was on the power play. One was at even strength. But
the 4th line has a Corsi for percentage of just under 68% through the first 4 games of the year at 5-on-5.
Right.
I mean,
we talked about that. That's a strength of the team. Like on a weaker team, like on the San Jose Sharks, Morgan Barron is probably playing on the second line. Like, no joke. Like, Alex Iafallo is probably playing on the second line. Like, the Sharks are obviously a team of third line guys. But the point is the Jets have one of the stronger
third line
fourth
AHL guys, but that's
like, and we could do that, guys. You know, that's an exercise maybe for like next week or whatever. Like, how does the Jets' 4th line stack up? I would have no problem saying that it's, you know, a top third of the league in terms of their 4th line, maybe even better.
Well, right now it certainly is. Right now they're, you know, the way they're performing, they just go out there and they win their minutes. So I mean,
unfortunate, David Gustafsson, I don't know when he's going to get in the lineup, but Rasmus Kupari is playing well.
Yeah, right now, you know, there's no reason to expect anything to change up. I know coaches always love to want to get sort of that 13th forward or that 7th defenseman into the lineup, you know, so they're not sitting for weeks on end to start the year. But, you know, justifiably, how do you make a switch right now? Who are you taking out when that 4th line is just not just winning?
It would
their
be
minutes?
Kupari. It would have to be, right, just as a center. I don't think you're not taking out Iafallo or Barron right now. I just thought they're playing well.
How do you take Kupari out right now, especially because he's sort of a younger player who's probably feeling as good about himself right now at the NHL level as he has since becoming an NHL regular? I just don't think you can seamlessly make that swap even for one game, Dave.
Well, and again, why would you? I mean, you're winning. So, you know, we know the coaches are loath to make adjustments when you have a winning formula. And again, these are not all perfect wins unless you're the Nemesnikov line. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, those other lines gave up shots against. I mean, Nemesnikov's line says, I don't think so. But the truth is, Drew, that it's hard to see him making a lot of adjustments. And Scott O'Neill himself was asked about getting those guys in, getting replacements in, you know, the guys who are waiting in the wings, if you will, the Dylan Coughlin's and David Gustafsson's, and eventually Logan Stanley, because it sounds like, you know, he, as should probably be mentioned, he switched to a yellow, from yellow non-contact to a regular jersey on Thursday. Still a ways away, but you know, at the end of the day, he's going to be there. Are they going to want to get him into matchups, or are they going to stick with what they've got? And of course, you got to deal with injuries and stuff like that. But ultimately, right now, especially with Kupari, because I think from what Scott O'Neill said, they really want to give this guy, to pardon the phrase, a long runway. And I think that you're going to see that. They want to see what they've got in him. And especially while the team's going, I think there's a good opportunity to kind of like unleash him a little bit and let him have that opportunity to play, you know, 10 games in a row and really get a chance to kind of evaluate his game, right, Ezzy, and not have to just say, okay, well, he played 2 games. Now you're going to have a longer viewing channel for the staff.
He's 25. Like, I think we know do we not know what Kupari is? Like, he's 25 now. To me, it's that he's playing well.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's more, Dave, that, like you said before, you're not going to take him out. You're winning and he's playing well. But I don't know if this argument of we got to see what we have in him, like, don't you have enough?
Well, I think you just have to.
He's 25 years old.
Sure, but I mean, if you're the Jets, how does he work within your structure? Because last year they didn't really get a chance to evaluate him because he was injured and he was kind of behind everything. I'm just saying that
he played 30 games though.
No, I know. I'm not suggesting that Rasmus Kupari is a second line center in waiting. I'm just saying that from everything Scott O'Neill has said, he just wants to see what he can do healthy and within the structure, and that's
no, I know. I just think essentially he's played better than Gustafsson. That's what it ultimately comes down to, right?
Well,
yeah, and I'm a big fan of Gustafsson.
Gustafsson also got hurt at the wrong time, right?
Sure, but you know, right now it's tough for him to get into the lineup. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
right. Like, but he's not. I think Kupari's staying in for the foreseeable future the way he's playing on that 4th line.
A good problems for the Jets to have. All systems go as of late, as the team is 4-0 early in this 24-25 season. When we come back, the show's going to get a hell of a lot smarter. Murat Atesh of The Athletic is about to join us. Ginsburg just went into the ether as well. There he's back. Stay tuned. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on a Saturday morning.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime. Visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of hour number 1. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. I might task Mr. Ginsburg with finding out where Mr. Atesh is as he's set to join
Probably
us.
sleeping in again.
I know. The poor kid is very sleepy. Somebody's got to wake him up, set an alarm, something like that.
Some of us were up much later than Murat, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Boys, I hope I didn't tell Murat that we were on Sunday.
Yeah, that would have been a mistake on your part. I know that 1 week anomaly may have confused things, but that would have been an error on your part. In any event, we'll get Murat Atesh set to join us momentarily. Of course, this show brought to you by our friends at Play Now. Don't bet on illegal sites. Bet with Play Now instead. Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site, 18 plus. Enjoy responsibly. Big thanks to Play Now for their continued support of the Illegal Curve post-game show. As I was going to mention, I was going to bring it up with Murat, but we'll do it now. Jets and the Penguins tomorrow, the Brian Little Appreciation Day. I don't know, is that Dave? You know the official title of the day. Is that what it is, or something along those lines?
It's a Brian Little retirement day, I would call it. He's signing a 1-day contract to retire as a member of the Winnipeg Jets, which is pretty significant given all he's done for this organization, whether it was on the ice or off of it, when he accepted a trade he waived his, I should say, no move clause to go to Phoenix to give Arizona to give the Jets some cap flexibility. So I think he, because of the way he ended in November of 2019,
Yeah.
And the fact that it's the Jets, not that you always get a chance to say goodbye to a player, but I think for Jets fans, it really is going to be a nice opportunity. And for Brian Little himself, who really didn't get a chance to say goodbye to the fans, I think it'll be a real nice opportunity for him to have that experience, and for the fans to have that experience, right? As he to be able to say, to voice their appreciation, as we heard for Connor Hellebuck, and similarly for a guy like Brian Little, who was so impactful for this franchise.
To steal a wrestling term, I can't wait to hear the pop that Brian Little gets, because he was beloved here. And
I think to some extent, sorry, as he also underappreciated for how impactful he was.
I would agree with that.
You mean the fact that they tried replacing him as line A center for like 3 years?
Well, he's the kind of guy who was never flashy. I mean, nobody ever talked about Brian Little in hushed tones for how he was as a player, but all he ever did was perform effectively when he was on the ice. Just a tremendously underrated, undersized kind of guy who was never going to get the headlines. He was never going to be the star of the show, but he's the kind of guy that every single team needs, and the kind of guy who would have been appreciated, I think, in 31 other locker rooms more than necessarily by 31 other markets, if you want to get the difference there, that the players around the league knew how good he was, even if other fan bases, even the fan base in Winnipeg at times, didn't really recognize just how impactful and how effective he was in his roles for the Winnipeg Jets.
You're right, Drew. And I think part of it was that, he was like a 45, 55 point guy. Like, I think he scored 20 goals 6 times. Like, I was just looking at his stats here on Hockey DB, like, 843 games, 217 goals, 304 assists for 521 points. But his career was cut short, right? So like, if he wasn't injured all those years, he's most likely finishing his career with 300 plus goals and well over 600 points, probably closer to 700 points, right? So like, that is a really solid NHL career. It's not going to get you in the Hall of Fame. Nobody's saying that. But I think it's also because the way he conducted himself. Like, Brian Little was just that quiet leader, and it's always like, they say like you see the what a person's really like, or I'm butchering this, but a person is really who their friends are and who they surround themselves with. Obviously, speaking very highly of you boys, right? But like,
I was going to say doesn't say anything great about yourself there.
Well, no, and what I'm trying to say is Brian Little, just listen to the way other people talk about him, like other players talk about him, and that really shows you how well respected he was. And yeah, he was a good, talented center for the Thrashers and the Jets, and it's unfortunate that his career was cut short. But to me, it's just, he's a class act. That's what stands out to me about Brian Little. Like, nobody's going to say anything bad about him. He just went about his business. He wasn't a flashy guy, as you said, Drew, and he just had an excellent career. So like I said, I can't wait to hear the pop. I think a lot of people are going to have goosebumps when Brian Little is honored tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, I think that's very, very likely going to be the case. He's going to get a well-deserved acknowledgement from the people in Winnipeg and from the organization, that clearly the organization still holds him in very high regard, Dave.
Oh, and just one second, guys. Sorry, I got a text back from Murat. Murat is currently house sitting, and the puppy had an accident. So after he cleans up the puppy's accident,
have an accident, he's blaming it on the puppy. Is that kind of what we're getting here, Desi? Because that's what I'm thinking.
Look, I spent $700 on dealing with my dog this week, dealing with some unfortunate health conditions.
$700. Somebody's doing well.
Well, I mean,
not anymore. I was before the $700. So I understand puppy-related delays completely.
Puppy related, you don't have a puppy.
I know, but dog related delays is what I was like.
I was 17 yet. Brixton,
I was going to say
at this point, Brixton's an octogenarian.
Brixton is certainly a senior dog. She's 16. Yeah,
16. Yeah, good call by me.
Right. Yeah.
Anyways, the one thing
Brixton's immortal, right, Drew?
The one thing
I hope.
Yeah, the one thing I want to point out, because I think it, we're seeing in the chat, it is amazing to think that Brian Little's last game was November 6th, November 9th, 2019.
Yeah.
And what's amazing to me is that since that time, even before that time, but since that time, all this organization has done is look for a second line center to replace Brian Little, whether it was externally, whether it was internally. And in all these years later, it's amazing to me that they still haven't done that. Now, of course, they're hoping.
Like you
Brad
said,
Lambert's
Dave,
gonna-
they could use Brian Little right now.
Yes, that's
Good,
I'm-
you're right.
I mean, again, that's my whole point is that you had a guy who was that impactful and still is because they still haven't found his replacement, and they'll look and they're hoping with Lambert or Jaeger, sorry, that they might have it in the future. But for right now, they still don't have it.
Well, here's who we have. We have Murat Atesh of The Athletic. Good morning. I have a dog. I understand the predicament you were likely just in. How is the dog, first and foremost?
I mean, the dog is great. She's I don't know, 6 months old, puppy staged. We're looking after her, but this house is new to her. All the smells are new. Some of the toys are the same, all that, but she's going through it, I think, in a new environment. And, we've all been there, I suppose, and we're doing the best we can.
Murat, just do what I do with Ezzy. Put some newspaper down, or if he gets really bad, I just put him outside.
Yeah, exactly.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
And Murat, as long as the puppy's staying away from the phone and the laptop and your
how are the
shoes
shoes is what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
We have a few shoes in a few places. Yeah, I can confess to that. There's just over my shoulder. I don't know if you can see, but she just brought a shoe to her bed. She's not chewing on it, but it's just there with her now.
Okay, we got to point in the interview. The audience wants to see the puppy. So
forget about the audience. I want to see the puppy, for God's sakes.
Exactly. Before we wrap, we want to see the puppy.
Okay. Yeah. It's just Murat's fictitious puppy until then.
he slept in. I mean, I have a puppy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the Great Gazoo from the Flintstones. Doesn't actually exist. Only Murat can see it. Murat, let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets.
Is the puppy in the room with you right now? Sorry.
A 4-0 start. A complete annihilation of a bad team last night in the San Jose Sharks. All cylinders firing, especially after last night when they get the Nemesnikov Ehlers and Perfetti line going. Let me ask you this. We've been very sunshine and rainbows to start. If you had to pull the brakes a little bit, what area are you pulling the brakes on?
Yeah, there's room to believe there's some amount of reason to pull the brakes. There's some amount of paper tiger going on. Especially with Pittsburgh in town on Sunday too. There's a chance that this team goes 5-0 to start the year without really beating a good team at 5-on-5, right? The San Jose Sharks, credit to them, they're rebuilding, and some of their top young guns weren't in the lineup yesterday. Winnipeg did exactly what Winnipeg should do. And I know we're not supposed to talk like that in the NHL. There's no easy games. There's no all that. But we've seen it. The Jets have struggled in games like that before. The Sharks were a tough out for them last year, in the last few years even. So good on them for doing what they needed to do. I'm not going to plan a parade around that 8-3 game. Similarly, the Minnesota and Chicago games, they needed to fight tooth and nail to get to overtime and then win those games at 3-on-3. And then that first game against Edmonton, where it was special teams heavy, and the Oilers, got a couple of good shifts from Connor McDavid, but were otherwise not there. And you can see it in their record and their struggles to get going. They're not there. So, I would never really dig into too much critique of a 4-0 start, but it's also not a situation where they've run right into the top teams playing at their best. And there could be some reason to press the caution button at the very least.
Murat, I think, you would agree that even though it was against the San Jose Sharks, you'd love to see the Nemesnikov line break out, because that was obviously a big topic of conversation. You were talking about that line with Huss and Remus on Winnipeg Sports Talk. We talked about it on the post-game shows or on the Saturday show. So yeah, you take it with a bit of a grain of salt because it's against the Sharks. But we could have also, on the flip side, been talking about how that line had another poor game against an inferior opponent, right? And I specifically looked at Ehlers, and to me, that was just quintessential Ehlers, right? On the power play and at even strength. And I think that's a good sign, especially when you're going into, some tougher games. Say whatever you want about Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh can score goals, right? So what were your kind of overall takeaways from the Nemesnikov line, who obviously, all you have to do is look at the box score to see how well they played.
Yeah, and I shouldn't have thrown Pittsburgh in with that same group, to be honest, earlier a moment ago. In terms of
oh my gosh, that is not a small puppy.
No. Is that a Great Dane?
No, I don't know her breed. I don't know breeds.
Is it a Weimar? No, it's a German short-haired pointer, I think, if I had to guess.
I was expecting like a cute little like that
So
is a
was I.
that's a horse.
Pretty cute dog.
Yeah, she's like, I don't know if she's 6 or 7 months at this stage. Like she's
Still
not
growing.
a baby. Yeah.
Is that dog's name Clifford?
Stacy. By the way, Stacy's in agreement. It is. She thinks also it's a German short-haired pointer. So kudos to me.
All right. Yeah, here we go.
You walk the dog or the dog walk you?
The Perfetti Nemestikov Ehlers line, right? Is that
Yeah.
So for me, the issues that they had in the first few games were sort of getting up the ice with the same plan. You had some moments of Ehlers trying to go globetrotters, and it just didn't work. You had Cole Perfetti holding on to pucks until the play was dead, and it just the timing wasn't there. Nemestikov wasn't there yet either. Yesterday, I mean, let's start with the defensive zone, where before that first goal that Josh Morrissey scored with that line on the ice, it was Cole Perfetti making it back to his crease and breaking up a goal mouth play. So there's not even a shot attempt, despite the Sharks looking backdoor. So that leads to the first goal that line gets. It's Morrissey's goal. Later, you have Ehlers scoring on the rush. His even strength goal was a Cole Perfetti backtrack to the blue line. Neil Pionka gapped really aggressively at the Jets blue line because he saw the back pressure coming. Give away from the Sharks, take away by the Jets, and now Ehlers is going the other way. It's encouraging because they did it in the right way, I guess, is why I'm leaning on the defense into offense sort of angle. It's, I really don't hold last night's Sharks team in high esteem, but who cares? The Jets played the way they needed to play. They didn't get into bad habits. And that line in particular turned defense into offense, got up the ice, had a plan, found each other, got the timing right, and really paid off for them. Well,
it's, 3 questions in, and we have to talk about the man of the hour. Yesterday was Connor Hellebuck. The William Jennings, the Vezina trophy were being shared with the crowd. It was a day and a night. His dad, Chuck, the international celebrity, was in the crowd, but it was about a celebration of him. And I thought, isn't that appropriate given the article that you wrote with Jesse Granger, I believe from the Athletic Vegas, why Jets Connor Hellebuck is the most underappreciated goalie of his generation. So why not share with the audience why he is, in fact, that?
Yeah, it's a bold title. And I think the claim really is when you look at these other great goalies lists, like, at the end of last season when you had these all-stars, these Hall of Fame goalies saying who are the best goaltenders in the NHL right now, and Connor Hellebuck isn't even on that list in some guys' cases. Or to start this season, the various rankings that you see and at other sites. I think Dom's models really believes that Connor Hellebuck is the Jets, sometimes a little bit too heavy in that regard. But you look around the league at other places, you see situations where they don't seem to think he's even amongst the best few goalies, even after winning that second Vezina trophy. And it just seems to me that Connor Hellebuck gets robbed of league-wide acclaim for a couple of reasons. One is that the Jets haven't gone deep in a while, and that he would be a part of for sure. The other is a commitment to. See, Poco's also, concerned that Hellebuck's not getting enough.
Criminally underappreciated.
But his big and boring style keeps him off of some of the highlight reels, right? Like every once in a while, he'll stun us all with the paddle save, or there's something particularly acrobatic. But I think that some of the other goalies of the generation end up on highlight reels because they end up out of position. It's not that they're compact and just they've made the perfect read. It's that they've had to scramble to make some of the same saves. And that, I think, costs perception. Playing out of Winnipeg can hurt you too sometimes, I think, in the league-wide, in terms of getting league-wide love. But even then, the overall respect that Connor Hellebuck gets is high, right? He's got a good contract, He's making $8+ million a year. He's got the 2 Vezinas. I think the world knows he's good. I just think that if you look at the body of work and the consistency and the year in and the year out, the amount of goals he steals from other teams, the amount of times he's been the absolute backbone of the Winnipeg Jets, we've underestimated how great he is. And this is a player that should there be a Stanley Cup in his future, would be an automatic Hall of Famer. And it's sometimes stunning to me that there's even a debate around that.
Yeah, Murat, before Drew, you get in here, I was just going to say, like, to your point, and I have no problem, saying this, because obviously I'm not going to make a bold proclamation here, but I mean, I think I think what you're trying to say, Murat, if I know what I'm trying to say, is that you're trying to say, like, we should not be taking this for granted here. Like, we know that he's great and excellent, right? With the Vezinas and everything like that, the Jennings, but you're trying to say that it's almost like sometimes it's like, yeah, he's great, but he's actually elite, the definition of elite. And I think, like, I've had this conversation with Dave. Dave can back me up, like, and this is a bold proclamation, but I think he's almost already in the top 10 goalies of all time conversation.
I'd love to
that's
see.
Bold.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go through it. There's there's the untouchables, the Hashicks.
Sure.
Hasek for me is number one. I know
Marty Broder
on a lot of those too. Yeah, I think Hasek was just more of a freak and more of a guy who carried the entirety of his team. But
he's the goat.
Broder's got the cups, right?
Yeah.
And like the legacy comes in for better or for worse. You can be great for an extended period of time. You got to win the championship in the culture that we have in NHL discussion, even as the league grows, even as it gets harder, as parity builds, and you're not just sending a goalie to a stacked team or what have you. You have to win those. And I think it's part of what's hurting Hellebuck's reputation now. Not that people don't think he's good, but like you said, like, appreciate greatness. Yeah, and it really is sort of me, part of me. Now, Haley's got the dog outside right now. I really apologize to you guys. I've had mine in two places.
Don't need to apologize. We love dogs.
If you have
any other animals, Murat, bring them out.
When it's dog related, this show always gives a little bit of grace.
Right on. I just think that as it is to your point with me and my thoughts on Hellebuyck is, like, I think everybody knows they've got a good one. And I think that the idea that, like, it's almost tough for the market, tough for the out of market to wear it unless there's a series of deep playoff runs, that they don't just have a good one. They have maybe the best goalie of the present moment in any given season and one of the best goalies of his generation, without a doubt, and maybe even your point as well.
Saturday morning, you're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. The show's presented by our friends at Play Now. Our guest is Murat Atesh of The Athletic. Murat, a lot of attention to start the year on that Jets second pairing. How is Dylan Samberg going to acquit himself moving up, playing in an elevated role? How is Neil Pionk going to handle is he going to be able to bounce back from a number of down years? Small sample size, with that being the caveat, but good results so far from both of them. What are you seeing from the Jets' second pair of Samberg and Pionk so far?
Yeah, I'm seeing progress in kind of the areas that you would want to see progress. Neil Pionk can be a good top four defenseman when he's mobile, when he's aggressive at the Jets' blue line, when he's using lateral movement to stay aggressive and cut plays off before it turns into long extended zone time. That takes reads, and he has those. It also takes the movement, like I've been harping on. There have been some times in the last couple of years where you just watch him give up the line. We know that, he finally confessed, the ankle injury that he had 2 years ago. There were some issues as well. And when he's not moving like he can, and when he's not stepping up on plays and making those reads and having that confidence that comes with success in that role, well, then he gives up the line, and he's not one of the best at shutting down that long in zone play. If he can get out of that situation, which he has so far, he'll have success. And that's been even that goal that we just talked about, where he gaps up aggressively, Perfetti takes the puck, Ehlers scores the goal. I mean, that's defense into offense, and it's Neil Pionk doing exactly what he can be good at, and once upon a time was very good at in the NHL. For a couple of years there. For me, Dylan Samberg, here's a player I really believe in stepping into a top four role. The defensive reads are there. The physicality is there. He's not a player who gets beat backdoor in his own zone because he failed to scan. He's a good scanner. He sees what's going on. He breaks up plays as well. for me, my question marks for Samberg heading into the year were, what's he going to do with the puck on his stick leading into a breakout? Like once he stops the play, what's the next play? Is he going to see that breakout pass? Is he going to execute it? If he executes it, is he going to jump into the rush like they're supposed to do? And I think that stepping into this bigger role, I was talking to Samberg about this at camp, that like chaining reads together and seeing, almost making it automatic instead of making the play, looking up, okay, catch my breath, here's what I got to do, is the next step for him. And I think so far early returns are good. I really believe in that defenseman.
Yeah, I mean, we all remember that goal against Edmonton, right? That was a beautiful shot. And that kind of, if we're talking about just that one play, right, that answered some of your questions about, him jumping up into the play and adding more of a little bit of an offensive element, even though nobody's expecting him to put up, 50 points a season. It would be nice, obviously. But Murad, I wanted to ask you about Brian Little, because obviously, he's going to be, Hellebuck had his night, and it's going to be Brian Little afternoon, not Brian Little night. And we were talking about him, Little, that is, a little bit before you came on. What stands out to you? Because obviously, Brian Little's career, like, you forget he's only 36 years old. If he didn't suffer that injury, he might still be playing, right? And we even joked the Jets probably wouldn't mind having him up the middle on that second line with Perfetti and Ehlers, and then maybe that drops Nemesnikov down to the fourth line. But what stands out to you about Brian Little, who obviously, we're talking about Hellebuck being a future Hall of Famer. Obviously, nobody's going to call Brian Little a Hall of Famer, but he had a really solid career in his time with Winnipeg. Yeah,
before I show up on the scene working for The Athletic, there's a lot of years of Ladd, Little, and Wheeler as just one of the, I want to say, most underrated lines in the NHL for a long stretch. It was one of those situations where they dominated at 5-on-5. They absolutely did. And if you care about 5-on-5 play and the metrics and things like that, sometimes the numbers at the end of the season weren't like a point per game or anything to that effect. But they hemmed teams in their zone at 5-on-5. All three of those players were great. And Little as sort of the centerpiece is the word that comes to mind, but of course he's the center, and that made so much sense to me. Such skill, such finishing ability, such intelligence, that sort of linked everything together. And he always found a way to get to soft ice in the middle of the ice and get to the net and score goals. That was a lot that I admired kind of before getting into the room, and then meeting him and interacting with him. And then just in interactions in the Jets dressing room, I found him to be so level-headed. I thought he was so thoughtful. He would call things like they were without it feeling like he was ever getting too high or too low. I remember one time I was having a semi-serious conversation with Blake Wheeler where it was a playoff. I think it was before the Nashville playoff series, because the Jets had just beaten Minnesota in 5 games. And
did anyone ever have any casual conversations with Blake Wheeler?
And I just said what would have been the wrong thing to say to a Blake Wheeler at a time like that. It was something to the effect of, isn't it nice to just have a few days where you can sort of dial it back a bit and not be at 110% all the time? Because they were waiting at that time. And Blake Wheeler fixes me with that glare that is like, okay, you idiot. And then over his shoulder, because they were sitting beside each other at the Iceplex, Brian Little just starts laughing. And it completely diffuses the thing. He looks at me, he looks at Blake, he looks at me. And it just completely made it a calmer, okay, we're all laughing now. I remember after 2019, when the Blues series was over and the Jets got beat, everybody was a bit angry and shell-shocked, and they didn't know what to say in the room. But he found words to describe that playoff series, and he was very good in that playoff series too. Even in Game 5, he was one of the guys that was really or Game 6. It was a Game 6 exit against St. Louis.
Yeah, it was 6 games. Yeah,
he was one of the guys that was pushing in the third and generating offense and making things happen. And he would have been as shell-shocked as the rest of them, I imagine. But just his calm articulation and making sure that everybody in the room had what they needed. I've seen so many little stories or little moments where Brian Little has done the right, good human thing. And none of them have been headline worthy, but all of them have been positive. And that's my lasting takeaway.
He didn't tell Paul Friesen to go F himself at any point in time, like somebody else in the Jets dressing room after that St. Louis game did.
Yeah, exact same same game, same night. Exactly right. The fuck off freeze. Sorry, guys. The
You
F
can
off
say it on.
freeze.
Don't worry.
No,
you
we're
can
not
say
on
it.
radio anymore. You can say the F word.
Poco's just a puppy. I don't want her hearing.
Yeah,
this.
don't burn the ears there.
Yeah.
Okay, you're a vibes guy. We know you're a vibes guy. So there's probably no bigger vibes guy in the Jets dressing room than Eric Comrie. I mean, he's just a guy that when you're talking to Mark Scheifele, who sometimes is a little bit, a tough nut to crack, get a smile out of. I mentioned Eric Comrie when we were doing, I think this was in the captain skates before the season even gotten underway, and the smile was ear to ear. We know how Josh Morrissey feels about him. How much do you think that impacted? I know you wrote an article about Eric Comrie, about how he came back to Winnipeg, how he won the job. But from your perspective, when you saw Kaapo Kähkönen and Eric Comrie, to me, especially the way things looked like they were setting up, a lot of people were kind of caught off guard. But when he was when he was backing up the last two preseason games, and then when he backed up in Edmonton, he thought, well, this seems like they're going with Comrie over Kähkönen. How much do you think? How much at ease? How much his good relationship, having come up the system with so many of these guys, including Connor Hellebuck, played a role, and also the fact that they think he can get back to what he did with them many years ago.
Yeah, I'm with you in that I had it in my mind as Kaapo Kähkönen was gonna take that job. I thought that based on NHL numbers to date, based on certain things, that Kähkönen had the advantage there. And then right before he backed up Hellebuck in those last two preseason games, there was a practice at a Hockey for All where I was hanging out with North End Rick. I don't know if he's a regular on the show, but Twitter person.
Oh yeah, we know Rick really well. Yeah,
and he was pointing out, he's like, "Oh man, you know what? Kähkönen's kind of getting beat today. Like he was just not having a day." And I was like, "Oh, you know what? Like let's take a moment and think this through." And then Comrie gets the backup gig for those and for Edmonton, and it's okay. Well, here we go. Maybe there's something here. And even until the moment Kähkönen was waived, it seemed to me like it was hard to be sure what was going to happen. And then Comrie emerges, and credit to him for that. I think Comrie's bet on himself is that he's got some good health this year. In the piece that you're talking about, we talked just a little bit about some training tweaks he made to sort of activate his core and a little bit more. He described being less hingy in the net. But really what it comes down to is it's a place and a context where he's had some of his biggest success, where some of his best friends play, Josh Morrissey being a good example, Mark Scheifele being a good example. He officiated Eric Comrie's wedding because they were so close. They're just hanging out one day. The idea came up. That's there. The good relationship with Connor Hellebuck, with Wade Flaherty. There's so much there. And then talking to Comrie for that interview, you say I'm a vibes guy, and like sometimes I'm just a robot and I don't see feelings at all. In that conversation, I was completely dialed into feelings, and Comrie to me strikes me as a guy who really leans in to things like comfort and relationships and feeling at ease with the team and the roster and things like that. If I had to guess based on disposition and based on some of the things that we were talking about, who would have a harder time in a 3-goalie rotating situation in Buffalo, coming up, coming down, getting hurt and what have you, and who would have a more successful time in Winnipeg where he knows everybody so well. Eric Comrie and the way that he talks about the guys and the way that he interacts seems like exactly the candidate to do better in this city and with the relationships that he has here.
Which game is going to be Comrie's first game of the season? I mean, you look at the schedule. There's no back-to-backs. It's every second night. Which one do you think he gets?
Could be
do you
tomorrow.
Think he gets what? You think he gets one of the three on the road trip? This upcoming road trip?
Yeah, before it all started, I thought that, or I guess the moment I learned that Connor Hellebuck night was Friday, I thought Hellebuck would get the first 4, and I had tomorrow earmarked as the Eric Comrie game. Now, I know Hellebuck is famed for loving the afternoon, right? Like, this is a thing about him. No morning skate, just get there, do the job. Like, so there's a reason.
Despite the fact his numbers aren't that good in the afternoon, there's a bit of a fallacy about that.
Okay, so that's an interesting one, and maybe I don't really think that giving up 3 goals in that Sharks game is a catastrophe. But if you really wanted to twist your brain and say, well, hey, he finally was human for a night, maybe it's time to give him a break. This could point to an Eric Comrie start tomorrow. All that said, Pittsburgh is scoring a ton. Malkin and Crosby are hot to start the season. There's a lot going on there. Maybe you do go back to your guy and it's not till the road. So the answer is I don't know. Before this, I would have thought tomorrow would have been Comrie with the idea that the afternoon, I don't know, Hellebuck might strong arm his way into it.
No, Murat,
sorry,
I was just going to, before you get your last question in, how funny is it? I don't know if you've been following, Kakanen's been having visa issues. Like, how funny is it that Colorado would probably actually have started him recently if he wasn't having these visa issues with the way Georgiev and Annunen has struggled, right? It's pretty crazy how that's developed, that who we thought was going to be the Jets' backup is now the goaltender that Colorado desperately wants to get into their net, right?
Yeah, and especially after the playoffs where Colorado's goaltending was supposed to be the weakness. It's like, hey, wait, there it is. There it is.
Yeah, it was the weakness in every other series after the Jets won, unfortunately for Jets fans. Okay, last one for you, Murat, and I'll let you get back onto puppy duty. Early in the year, coaches never want players to sit. They never want this 13th forward to be sitting for weeks at a time. They never want the 7th defenseman to be sitting for weeks at a time. Given how strong the 4th line for the Jets has been, and given how solid the 6 defensemen have been for the Jets, where do you see an opportunity for David Gustafsson, or now that he's healthy, for a Logan Stanley to get back into this lineup?
Yeah, it can, as far as I'm concerned, it could be literally any game that the coach decides. Like, I think there are enough structural things going well for the Winnipeg Jets that their success does not depend on rolling the identical winning lineup. Their success, despite, like, let's give Hayden Fleury his credit. Let's give Rasmus Kupari credit too. I mean, Kupari heading into the season, I thought him as the guy that's always in the picture and never doing anything because his reads were a step behind his feet. Well, he's processing the game a little bit quicker now, and he's making things happen. He's generating scoring chances. There's a little bit more there this year, and let's give credit there. At the same time, I don't think Winnipeg's early season success hinges so strongly on those guys that you couldn't rotate in Gustafsson tomorrow, and things would be just fine. Logan Stanley, it seemed like Arneal wanted to see how he responded to some of these skates a little bit in some of these practices before declaring him 100% fit to go. But even then, once he does feel like he's ready to go, I think Fleury's played pretty darn well. And also, I think you could give Stanley that, because the thing you don't want is it to suddenly be the middle of November and they're playing in the middle of this stretch where they've been playing every other night forever, and now somebody's dinged up, and now you're throwing an ice cold Logan Stanley, or even by then Ville Heinola into the mix. Like, they're going to need these guys, and I think that they're good and they're well enough off that they could throw them in whenever they feel.
Murat Atesh covers the Winnipeg Jets for The Athletic. He's also an expert dog sitter and dog walker, so we'll let you get onto that. Hopefully we'll see you around the neighborhood with the pup. We can I'll introduce your
And
puppy
Drew
to my 16-year-old puppy.
Get Poco some food, because that dog needs to be fed if it's going to keep growing to its full size.
She'll be a 6-foot wolf by the next time we do this show. Thanks for having me, guys, and thanks for bearing with.
Thanks, Murat. Have a great rest of your Saturday. We'll see you again soon. There he goes. Murat Atesh joining us this morning. Always
that was
great.
A big dog. What did you say that was? A German pointer?
A
or
German
short-haired pointer.
They're beautiful.
They're nice.
Dogs.
They're really nice dogs, actually.
Yeah, they are. I have a friend.
Dave's always been a huge dog lover. Ever since I've known Dave, he's always known a lot about dogs and always been very good with a lot of dogs.
Dave is willing and happy to actually walk other people's dogs.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but he doesn't have his own dog. So explain yourself, Minuk.
Oh.
There's no explanation. I just, unfortunately,
that was Ruben and Gabby, the babysitter.
Okay. Is Gabby walking Ruben? Is that what's happening right now, or Ruben's walking Gabby?
I'm pretty sure it's the other way around. But no, I mean, look, I've been a dog uncle for most of my life because a little bit busy, but. German Shepherd, Golden Retriever, 2 of my favorites, and usually have those to take for a
That's
walk.
mine. So. If I ever get a dog for my kids, and I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, that's what I would go with, a Golden Retriever.
Well, it's can't go wrong with a beauty. Any dog is a beautiful dog, but I'm always of the policy to adopt, not shop. That's where we got our.
Don't judge Mindell.
I'm going to judge a little bit. There's so many dogs. The Humane Society is overflowing. The Winnipeg Animal Services.
Where'd you get Brixton from?
We got her from the Humane Society.
I know.
You think that Brixton's a designer dog? I love my dog, but she ain't no designer dog.
It is probably
have your dog spayed or neutered.
There you go. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob Barker.
Yeah. When we come back, more on the Jets and the
Neil's
Penguins.
my dog. It's your boy Bruce, aka Neil.
Button.
He's my dog.
Would you shut up? Craig Button at the bottom of the hour as well. Saturday morning,
woof.
the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, where the show rolls on.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now, you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Quarter after the hour, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Craig Button set to join us at the bottom of the hour. Always great to catch up with Craig. He was on the broadcast with Sarah last night, so I'm sure he'll have some insights and analysis regarding the Winnipeg Jets. Tomorrow, the Pittsburgh Penguins come to town. As we've sort of talked about briefly on the show so far, a Penguins team that can certainly put the puck in the net. With Crosby and Malkin, that shouldn't come as a surprise, but also a team that has had a lot of difficulty in keeping the puck out of their own net. And that's really a game where the Jets should be able to, their attention to detail has to be on point, especially in the defensive zone, because the Penguins play so loose otherwise that the Jets need to start on the defensive side of things, and then they should be able to generate opportunities against a Penguins team that's pretty loose.
Yeah, it's not a very good defensive team. You're absolutely right, Drew, but it's obviously not a pushover either. And you guys remember, Alex Nedeljkovic was the goaltender who led them and finished the season and got them into remember, they were very close to making the playoffs last year. It came down to, I think, the last game or the last couple games. If you guys remember, of course you remember, who could forget? Nobody in the Eastern Conference wanted to claim that last wild card spot, right? Like you had like Detroit in there, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and obviously Washington claimed it, and then abruptly was swept right after that by the New York Rangers, right? So the East is obviously top heavy, as we know. It's pretty middle heavy actually as well. But I really wonder, where does this Pittsburgh Penguins team go from here, right? Like, obviously, they're off to an okay start, 3-3, but like this team has to win. But you wonder, like, what's the best case scenario for this Penguins team to get into the playoffs in a wild card spot and then lose to like the Rangers or the Devils or another team, right? Like, it's a team to me that's just been going sideways forever. And like, when I think about Pittsburgh, like, I think of just how much I'm going to love watching Crosby in these last 2 or 3 years, right? And that's what stands out to me. Like, you have the Penguins coming into town. There's going to be lots of Crosby jerseys. And it's always just a treat for Jets fans to be able to watch him live. But yeah, I mean, look, they can score goals, and their power play is looking a little bit better than it was. I think it was last in the NHL or second last in the NHL last year. It was a big problem for them. And you're still gonna have to know who's on the ice, and they have other players too, like Rickard Rakell. He's off to a pretty good start as well. So it's once you get into the kind of lower lines, they bring in Cody Glass to hopefully resurrect his career. Obviously, Glass is from Winnipeg, so it's gonna, let's put it this way, it's gonna be a lot more challenging of a game than it was against the Sharks. The Penguins have a lot deeper of a team than the Sharks do. That's for sure.
This Penguins team, Dave, sort of reminds me of a Jets team of yore in that they're all gas, no breaks. Not a lot of defensive structure, not a lot of defensive attention to detail so far. They've given up 19 goals at 5-on-5. So it's not like they're getting killed, on the special teams or on the PK. It's all happening at 5-on-5. So this reminds me of a Jets team of a few years ago where it was just basically open season in terms of 5-on-5 play, loosey-goosey, always focused on the offense. And we know that that's not necessarily a long-term recipe for success.
No, and I'm with Az. Like you look at this team and you try and figure out what the vision is, because they've traded away so many prospects in order to try and get better, in order to try and maximize Crosby and Malkin's, the kind of the end of their careers, and hoping that they can kind of give them another shot, another Stanley Cup chance. And so your farm system is nothing to write home about. And so that's a problem from the long-term perspective. And you don't really have the depth to challenge those other Eastern heavyweights right now. So the Penguins, to the point as he just made, are that kind of team that are going to hover. They're going to be in that race with Sidney Crosby. I never ever discount that any team with him on it, because he's just so good. But there's only so much one man can do. So you look at that and you think, okay, this team will be, probably in and amongst the teams fighting for the final, couple of playoff spots in the Eastern Conference. But really, ultimately, what is their likelihood of getting very far? And it's not, I just don't see it. I don't see the vision there. So I understand that, they tried to get Erik Karlsson to really see if they could maximize, knowing that contract is already looking a little bit rough, going to be even rougher in a year or two, but knowing that, okay, maybe that is a spark for our offense. But the problem is, as you just touched on, Drew, it's a lot of offense, not a lot of defense. And when you don't have goaltending that you can kind of sit back and rest on your laurels, which for the record is what the Jets were able to do when they played that style, because they had Connor Hellebuck. You have a lot more latitude to make that sort of decision, because you're like, okay, well, if we blow it, which we probably will, he's going to save our bacon, which Josh Morrissey literally said that 2 days ago, and they're not necessarily talking about the present day Jets, but just that idea of having someone like that. The Penguins do not have that. And because of that, it's hard to play that style, because it opens you up to being a team that's let in, 25 goals already on the season, and second most in the NHL. So I just don't see it as a recipe for success, whether it's, on a year basis or even on a long-term basis, because they don't seem to have the system in place to, with the Jets. The one thing about the Jets you'll say is that they've developed well. I know folks are going to say, oh, well, look, they've stagnated their prospects. But the point is that they always seem to have that crop. And then with the Jets, it sometimes is that, you remember in 16-17, after they made their playoff run, they kind of had to let their forwards grow in. They had their defense already structured. Now it feels like they've got some young forwards that they might have to let grow in, and they've already kind of got everything else solidified. But regardless of that, like I said, it just seems that this Penguins team seems to be a bit of a mishmash, Ezzy.
Well,
no, it's absolutely. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Drew. I was going to say it's absolutely a mishmash. Like again, I think, if you're a Jets fan, and obviously, I imagine most of the people watching the show and listening to the podcast are, just appreciate what we have today in Crosby and Malkin, because these guys are towards the end of their careers, right? And just appreciate what they're, because the thing with Crosby and Malkin is, it's not like these guys are mediocre players now. Malkin is tied with Panarin for the league lead in points. And I realize some teams have played 3 games, some teams have played 6 games, but 11 points in 6 games, like Malkin's playing fine. And that goes, Drew, to Dave's point. Like, there's only so much Crosby and Malkin and Letang and Karlsson can do at this point in their careers. Like, the supporting cast just isn't there. Like, mentioned Rickard Rakell, he's got 3 goals so far. Brian Rust, I've always liked him. He's a good player. But like, then it just really thins out. And then you've got like a mishmash of, guys like Lars Eller, Puljujärvi on the third line with
Kevin,
Drew O'Connor.
Old friend Kevin Hayes isn't.
Yeah, Kevin Hayes, like, Cody Glass is centering that fourth line with Noel Acciari. Like, it's not as deep, especially when you compare the Penguins to the Jets. They just don't have the same forward depth or defensive depth. Like Karlsson and Letang, they're going to get their points, especially, when it comes to the power play. Like, they're still good defensemen, but at this point in their careers, and look, like, let's be honest here, Karlsson's never been one of the best defensive defensemen. And the goaltending to me is like, we'll talk to Craig Button about it when it comes to the Colorado Avalanche, because I want to get Craig's thoughts on the Avalanche, who obviously just got their first win. But this team, to me, like I mentioned, Alex Nedeljkovic, who became their number 1 goalie last year, he's now on a conditioning stint. But they need him back desperately, because the goaltending they're getting from Bloomquist and Jari, it's just not cutting it.
I look at last night's game between the Penguins and the Carolina Hurricanes as sort of a model that the Jets should try and emulate. What do the Hurricanes and the Jets have in common? They have excellent structure, by and large, in common. So what do you need to do against a team like Pittsburgh, that team that's always going to be go, go, go? You need to have that structure, because that's where they're going to fall apart. That's where Pittsburgh's going to have difficulty, is playing against a team with structure, because they don't know how to, they just don't know how to necessarily counteract that. If the Jets keep their structure, then they should be in a good position against a team like Pittsburgh, even with the firepower that Crosby and Malkin bring to the table. That's why that, to me, is really a key for the Jets' success. It's a key for the Jets' success night in and night out, but particularly tomorrow. Pittsburgh wants teams to get into a track meet with them. They want to get into a race with other teams, because that's how they can succeed. The Jets don't want to do that. They want to stay within their game. They want to make Pittsburgh try and play the Jets style of game, because I don't think the Penguins can, which should lead to opportunities for the Winnipeg Jets, especially then against weak goaltending that the Penguins have had so far this year, Dave.
Yeah, it's about being opportunistic, and it's about, again, what we've been talking about, which is imposing your will and your game plan on the opposition. And I think this is probably the best example right now, Drew, of a team that is, you're going to try and impose that will, and you have last change, so you can get the matchups that you want, for the most part, obviously. And to me, that'll be a real sign, is we'll see it early in the game. Don't get involved in that. Don't get involved in that run gun. You have to get away. And look, it's fun. Players naturally want to play less structure and more free-flowing hockey. But I think the one thing the Jets team have seen is that they can win, they can have success.
Yes.
Playing this manner of hockey. They saw it last year. They're seeing it this year. Again, we're not saying the Jets are the perfect team. We're not saying that the Jets, don't have things that they need to work on and get better and improve on. Like I said, scoring at 5-on-5, absent yesterday, although they had some power play success, obviously, yesterday as well. But they had success all across the board yesterday against the Sharks. But that's one of those things that you want to see from the Jets, is that you can continue to play the game that has brought you to a 4-0 start. Again, the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But you right now are tweaking some of the things that you've seen through the first 4 games, right, Ezzy? But you're still embracing it for the most part, because it hasn't gotten you to the point where you have 8 points out of 8 points.
I'm really curious to see if Comrie gets the start tomorrow afternoon. Obviously,
I don't think so.
If
I don't think he does either.
If Hellebuck gets the start tomorrow, nobody's going to surprise. I didn't say that He is going to get the start. I'm just
curious.
curious because Hellebuck started the first 4 games, and we know that starting with last night's game, the Jets have 7 games in 13 days. So Comrie is going to get at least one start, if not a couple. I'm just curious to see because, even though Hellebuck, I'm leaning towards Hellebuck getting the start, but then you wonder when they go on the road trip, like, what is it, St. Louis?
I think Comrie gets the Seattle game.
St. Louis is Tuesday.
St. Louis is Tuesday. I think Comrie gets the Seattle game. That would be if I had to ask Wade Flaherty what the schedule is, because they have the schedule, they have that idea.
Yeah.
Then I think it's probably Thursday against the.
Well, boys, when is Eric Comrie night? That's when we'll know that he's playing. If it's Eric Comrie night.
His response to Drew would be like, "How did you get in here?
Who are you, and why are you talking to me right now?"
Yeah, but I mean, we know Hellebuck likes to play a lot. I mean, it's funny because I don't think we're going to be having the conversation this year, guys. How many games is Hellebuck going to play? 55 to 60. He's going to be right around 60. I think we all agree, barring any unforeseen injuries, right? So if Comrie doesn't get the start tomorrow afternoon, he's most likely going to get one of the starts in the first 2 games of that road trip.
Yeah, I would think that would be the case. But I mean, I go back to the Jets. I have to believe, and I think they believe that they know that their success, and it's been shown over the last year plus now, their success starts with their attention to detail. Look at the goals against San Jose last night. A number of them start with strong defensive play to then transition the puck up the ice. So that's why I think you're going to look for that same sort of style against the Pittsburgh Penguins tomorrow. Now, the Penguins are a better team again than the San Jose Sharks. They're a better team record-wise. They're a better team on paper. They have more talent. So you can't compare apples to apples, but both teams don't have that they don't have structure to their game. The Penguins are, like I said at the outset of this segment, all gas, no break. The Jets are going to need to try and slow the Penguins down, and then they should be able to take advantage of a weaker opponent. The Jets have more depth. They have better structure. They have a better approach to the game night in, night out, I would say, than the Penguins do, or afternoon.
Penguins win 4-2 tomorrow.
Well, I don't see that. I'll be honest.
No, I'm joking. No, I mean it's kind of what we already talked about. The Penguins have a team that can score goals and they can hang in there, but they're going to struggle against. Look, we saw it last night against Carolina. What is Carolina? They're a well-structured defensive team, right? And by the way, great to see Jackson Blake contributing for the Hurricanes. For those who know, he was a Hobie Baker runner-up and played for the UND, Jason Blake's kid. But I'm digressing here. You guys know Carolina is my pick to win the Stanley Cup. So anytime I have a chance to pump up the Hurricanes, I'm going to do that, right, Dave?
Look at the Penguins. Look who they've played. They lose to the Rangers 6-0. What are the Rangers? They're a good structured team. They're a good team. They lose to the Hurricanes 4-1 last night. Same thing. They lose to the Leafs. The Leafs are a good team, and Craig Berube is trying to teach them how to play within that structure. They lose 4-2 to the Leafs. Who have the Penguins beat? They beat the Red Wings. Well, the Red Wings are still not a very good hockey team. They beat the Canadiens. Still not a very good hockey team, and they beat the
playing
Sabres.
Pretty well though. Sam Montembeault leads the league in goals save above expected.
I know, but the Canadians are not what you would. Again, they're not a structured team. There's still a lot of loosey goosey activity
making the
to their
playoffs.
play. Well, my point is that you play structure against the Penguins, they tend to struggle, and that's why I think the Jets should have that focus tomorrow afternoon when they do battle in downtown Winnipeg.
I don't think the Habs are making the playoffs. I'm just trying to get under your skin, Drew.
I wasn't even listening to you. Penguins and post game after the Jets and the Penguins tomorrow, right around 4:30, 4:40 in that time frame. We'll talk about that when we come back. Craig Button, TSN Director of Scouting. You know him from the Jets, all the Jets on TSN broadcasts. He's going to join us next to talk about the Jets and look around the NHL early on in this 24-25 season. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's brought to you by our friends at Play Now. Don't go anywhere. Craig Button up next on this Saturday morning.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling sites instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Center. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
The latter half of hour number 2 starts now on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. The show is brought to you by our friends at Play Now, and we're pleased to welcome to the program from TSN. He's our very good friend, Craig Button, joins us on this Saturday morning. Craig, nice to see you. How are things?
Things are things are good, but things are great in Winnipeg, 4-0 and rolling right along. It's pretty impressive to see how well they've played. I don't think we should be surprised, but nonetheless, we should be impressed.
Impressed is certainly a good way to be. 4-0 for the Winnipeg Jets. A dream start, the first time in 1.0 or 2.0 history that they've won their first 4 games of the season. Craig, you pay as much attention to the Jets as we do, and all around the league. When you watch the Jets right now, is this just a team that is sort of building upon the structure that was put in place, and they believe that it starts with defensive responsibility and then everything else stems from that?
Yeah, I do believe that. And I mean, they gave up the least amount of goals last year in the NHL. So, obviously you have Connor Hellebuck, who's a big part of that. But you have to play good team defense to have the lowest goals against in the league. And certainly the Jets are committed to that. Everybody's been committed to that. We saw it happen last year. We're seeing it happen this year. And yes, they blow out Edmonton 6-0. They win 8-3 last night versus San Jose. But in the other 2 games where they only gave up 1 goal, tight games where they were in a game where they knew that they couldn't take an offensive risk. And they trusted themselves that we're going to keep playing. Yeah, it took a little bit of time, overtime to ultimately get the win. But when you're committed and you see the results, not that it's ever easy to stay committed, but your belief in what you have to do to be successful continues. And I think this team is a very strong, structured defensive team. And even the 1 goal, I believe it was Ehlers' goal, when they're tracking back, they create the turnover, and they're right back on the attack. And even like pressure, where you're going to put pressure on in the neutral zone. Like, you don't have to just skate back hard and then defend in your own zone. Defensively, I believe defensive play begins the minute you lose the puck. So the minute you lose the puck, you have to be committed now to making sure that you're working back to position, back to structure to get the puck back. And that can be in the offensive zone, it can be in the neutral zone, it can be in the defensive zone. But that goal, and that to me is a good example of that defensive commitment. And the Winnipeg Jets, it's no accident that they had the goals against last year, and that was the lowest in the NHL. It's no accident what they're doing this year with respect to the defensive play.
Craig, it just seems like yesterday that we were talking about the Jets drafting Cole Perfetti, and obviously it's only one game, and sure, it's the Sharks, but I don't really care. I mean, yesterday was one of the best games that I've ever seen him play at the NHL level, right? Creating the turnover, scoring the 2 goals in the third period. And as you know, I mean, a lot of people, Perfetti's been kind of a topic of discussion here because of, let's be honest, he struggled a little bit in the second half of the season, but boy, was it nice to see him put up 4 points yesterday because that second line through the first 3 games was just okay.
So we can go to okay and okay offensively, but we're going to go back to defensively.
Right.
They were part of the defensive play, and again, they're a good example, Ezra, of saying, okay, listen, we know we can score and we can get some points, but we're not going to chase it, and we're not going to hurt our team in our own chase for it. So I think we should make sure that we give them some accolades for playing really good defensively. Cole Perfetti's 21 years old. He's 21 years old. You know what I mean? I know he's been around for what seems like a long time. He's a good young player. Our expectations seem to be that we want something sooner rather than later. And players, as long as they're showing progression, and I thought Cole showed progression last year. To your point, Ezra, I think he had some challenges in the second half of the season. But also what happened is then they acquired Toffoli, they acquired Monahan. That pushed them into a different spot in the lineup and even out of the lineup at times. But he's a good young player that's 21 years old, and you start to see where a player is going to fit. And I don't think there's any question that he's a second line player. Now what he's got to do is just hold that spot. And last night, to your point, was a really good example of somebody getting in there and doing the things that you expect your team to do, your individual players to, and what the expectation of him is with respect to his capabilities. And his capabilities are good. And last night, certainly, it's encouraging for everybody to see that. The most encouraging is for Cole Perfetti to do it.
Right.
Craig, one of the biggest question marks with Brendan Dillon moving on during the offseason was, will Dylan Samberg be able to fill those minutes, fill that role that Brendan Dillon has, executed so well the last few years? So far, he's up, 5 minutes more playing time than he was at, again, early in the season, but he's up 5 minutes higher, about the 20-minute mark, just about above there. What are you seeing from Dylan Samberg, and how have you seen him so far take on that role that he's been given?
Did you happen to see the pregame last night, Dave?
I did.
And I talked specifically about Dylan Samberg.
I know. Okay. I want the audience to hear it, Craig.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. I
don't miss your stuff, Craig. I don't miss your stuff.
Well, thanks. But, how wonderful is it to have Sarah back? Isn't it wonderful to have Sarah back?
Absolutely.
She is all kinds of awesome. Anyway, so as I said last night, Dave, and Dylan has been a really good player. Like obviously a second-round draft pick. He was wildly successful at UMD in college. The Winnipeg Jets bring him in. They water him. They feed him. And they grow and they help him grow. They give him some sunlight. They don't and the benefit for Dylan is that he got to play behind Brendan Dillon. So he wasn't thrust into this position before he was ready to handle it. And then he gets to watch Brendan Dillon handle those minutes, handle those assignments, handle the responsibilities that go with being a second pair defenseman and having to play those significant minutes. And now, listen, Brendan Dillon was fantastic in my view for the Winnipeg Jets in so many different ways. And then change happens, and Brendan ends up leaving free agency, and good for him, but good for the Winnipeg Jets because what they were able to do is have Dylan grow, be mentored, And now when it became necessary for him to step into that role, he's ready. He's more than ready. And again, we talk about everybody wants to be somewhere yesterday. I mean, that's just society.
Mm-hmm.
That's not just hockey. And I said this: the Winnipeg Jets. There's nobody that does it better than the Winnipeg Jets. Now, there's some teams that do it as well, but in terms of their development model, nobody does it better than them. They put players in the positions where they can handle whatever that is. They help them grow. They help them develop. They're patient. They put good people and good players around them. And then now when it becomes necessary for Dylan Sandberg, in this case, to have to take a step forward, it's like, okay, we'll just slide him right in there. And he's ready to do it. And so to me, it didn't happen in the off season. Like he's taken on the new role. This has been something that they've been building, with all their players, and it's so impressive. One of the things that I've said many a times: NHL teams fail players more than players fail on their own by putting them into positions that they're not ready for, by not supporting them around, and not giving them support around them, and then oh boy, he didn't make it. He didn't do it. He's not this. He's not that. The Winnipeg Jets don't do that. And I know that at times younger players might feel a little bit, oh, geez, I want my chance. Give me my chance. I can't believe you're not giving my chance. What I would say is just trust the Winnipeg Jets. Just watch how they develop players and then set up players for success. And ultimately, you're going to get a lot of rewards. And I think that's critically important for young players to recognize, and I think they do. And in this case, for Dylan Sandberg to be able to take on, I mean, that's an important role, and it's a significant area of the team. And Dylan's not going to shy away from any of the challenges, and I think he's fully ready to be a top four defender and do what Brendan Dillon did for a lot of years.
I think Jets fans might clip that audio and video you just had and send it to Rutger McGroarty, Craig, with regard to the developmental process here in Winnipeg.
So I got to say something. Yeah. So I honestly believe that the Pittsburgh Penguins sent Rutger McGroarty down to the minor leagues so he didn't have to come to Winnipeg.
Just to avoid the awkwardness or the situation of it all?
Awkwardness or whatnot. I know Rector, and I love Rector, and Rector's a good, and he made a decision. But I think that's why they sent him down, so he didn't have to come to Winnipeg. But whether he's
I'm not going to disagree with you on that one, Craig. I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
But what lesson is that? What lesson is that sending to a young player, or is it just protecting him from himself?
Well, I mean, what I would say is, and again, you don't have to like what Rutger asked for or what he did, right? But we can respect it, right? And we can say, okay, listen, do what's best for yourself. And, if you don't feel that the fit in Winnipeg was right for you, there's going to be people that don't like it. And that just goes part and part. But when you make a decision like that, then you have to be accountable for it. And to me, what I think is they're not helping Rutger McGroarty be accountable. They're not doing that.
Well, similar to with Cutter Gauthier and the Flyers last year, right?
Well, but Cutter hasn't come back to Philadelphia yet.
Right.
I'm talking specifically about Rector. And there's other players. Adam Fox said he didn't want to go to Calgary. It's happened over time. We see it, okay? And again, we don't have to like it. We don't have to agree with it, but we can respect it. But when you make that you got to be accountable.
Well, so
players... like the Pittsburgh Penguins sending him down to Wilkes-Barre to avoid Winnipeg? Sorry, you're not helping him be accountable.
Do players owe teams an explanation when they say they don't want to play in a certain market, or they have the right to determine, the path of their career? They can say, I don't want to be there. Please trade me. Do they owe teams an explanation beyond just the rote answer?
I would hope that a team gets an understanding of why a player may not want to play in that organization. I don't think it has to be public, but I believe that the team is owed that. I mean, let's just use Rector for an example. They draft Rutger in the first round. They spend a lot of time with him in development for 2 summers. They're working with him and trying to help him. Now they're talking about, next steps for him. And so you've spent a lot of time with the young player trying to help him, advance his career. And again, nobody wants to hear that you're not wanted or I don't want to be part of it. Nobody wants to hear that. But when you get to that decision, I do believe that you have to say, listen, I don't want to come to Winnipeg. Whatever it is, I don't want to come to Winnipeg. I want to be closer to home. I want whatever. I do think that you owe that to the team that is invested time into you, right, and a selection. And like I said, it doesn't have to be public, but I think that I would hope that as hard as it may be for a team to hear it, as hard as it may be for a player or to say it, I think that okay, we understand now. We all can move on. And again, that's right. I think Rutger's a really good player and a good person, but Kevin Shovel-Dayoff, he's pretty darn good at taking situations and turning them around and not losing an advantage because Braden Yeager's a really good player.
Craig Button, our guest Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, joined by TSN Director of Scouting and, of course, Winnipeg Jets analyst Craig Button.
Craig, unlike Dave, I watched all of your work on the broadcast last night with Sarah. So I heard, just kidding, Dave. Obviously, I heard you guys talking a little bit about the Central Division, and everybody knows that the Avalanche and the Predators, they're not off to the start that they would like. And I got to specifically ask you about Colorado because the Jets lost in 5 games to Colorado, and we all know that Colorado beat the Ducks last night. They needed overtime to beat the Ducks, but that was their first win of the season. So I got to ask you now that you're on our show, how concerned are you with the Avalanche start to the season? Because obviously there's injuries and the goaltending hasn't been good. But I mean, a lot of people, myself included, thought that it was just a given that the Avalanche would be a top 3 team in the Central.
Count me among them, Ezra, as someone who thought they would be a top 3 team. And I felt at the beginning of the year over the summer after watching what Nashville did, I felt Dallas, Winnipeg, Nashville, and Colorado. Like I think those 4 teams that comprise the top end of the Central Division, there was no division that had that type of quality in their top 4 teams. And even I was asked, I mean, I know I do, predictions and whatnot. I said, like, any one of those teams could finish first. Any one of those teams could finish fourth. And I thought they were all good. And last year, three of those teams had 100 points, and Nashville bumped right up to near 100 points. So it wasn't about, they have to take these leaps. They were there last year. So now to answer your question, I mean, last night, I believe it was the 45th shot of the game that it took before McKinnon put the puck in and they ended up winning. And Anaheim had 19 shots on goal. Mm-hmm. And even the time goal by Troy Terry, it's just another example of a real weakness for the Colorado Avalanche. The goaltending's been it hasn't even been American Hockey League level. And, we know they have injuries. So a lot of teams have that, right? But when you play well enough and your goaltender can't stop anything, like, you have no chance. I don't care if you have injuries or you don't have injuries. You have no chance. And Georgiev at this point in time has been beyond poor. He just hasn't been. And even last night, they're up 3-2. I mean, Troy Terry takes a shot from outside the dot on an angle that isn't great. And all of a sudden, with 7 seconds left in the game, or just 15 seconds, whatever it was, Colorado's going, oh my God, not again. Not again. And I think Chris McFarland has to address it. I think he has to go out and find a goaltender.
No, Craig, the Jets have a lot of fun prospects in the pipeline. Kevin He, as of 2 days ago, was leading the OHL. His motor just doesn't seem
He is hot.
He is him, but it doesn't seem to stop. Braden Yeager, who you're talking about, he had a goal and assist yesterday for Moose Jaw. He looks like a real good player from what we saw here in Winnipeg when he was at training camp. The one I want to ask you about, though, is Colby Barlow. Because, of course, he was the subject of conversation throughout leading up to the season. He was going to go to, didn't want to go back to Owen Sound. Wasn't really made official, and then he gets traded to Oshawa. He picked up his first assist yesterday. He had the game winner in a shootout for the Generals. But my question for you is, in terms of how long does it take for a player? And I know there's not one answer, but from a guy getting acclimatized to a new team in a new market, for someone like Colby Barlow, who, like I said, picked up his first assist in 7 games yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think Colby's a terrific young person. I think he's a really good player and a really good prospect. He was the captain in Owen Sound, and so as a young player who really was such an integral part of their leadership and did it on and off the ice in such an exemplary fashion. I think they're for other players that don't have kind of that footing, that foothold in a market and with an organization, I think it might be a little bit easier. I think for Colby, probably the hardest thing for Colby was saying, I need to be somewhere else. And again, we were talking about Rutger. Colby is kind of saying, like, you know what, I'm going to leave Owen Sound, and that doesn't come easy for Colby Barlow. I haven't talked to him, but I know him, and I know that wouldn't come easy to him. So now you're trying to settle into a new play. How do I fit in? I mean, Colby has always been a player that has been somebody that I'm going to take a hold of things and I'm going to make my presence known, and I'm going to, he doesn't need to wear a C to be a leader. He's just a leader, period. And I think that now trying to find your way in a new organization and with younger players, and I think Colby has a really good, strong understanding of it. With younger players, you don't want to overpower them. The NHL is a little bit different. The players are older, more mature. You don't want to be a 19-year-old player and overpower kids, and you want to work with them. And I think that's what makes Colby such a good leader. And so I think it is taking him a little bit of time there. But I don't think there's any question that he'll settle in and he'll be really productive and he'll find his leadership voice and his leadership role in Oshawa. But we expect sometimes a change. Okay, he's just going there. They'll change quickly. He'll be right back on fire. He'll be fine. I'm not worried. I mean, there's certain players that you just go, yeah, I'm not so worried. I'll just share this with you guys because you talked about Jaeger and they played Medicine Hat last night. I was in Medicine Hat on Wednesday, and people, what's wrong with Gavin McKenna? What's wrong with Gavin? I'm at the game. They lost 8-1 to Prince George. And Gavin McKenna was brilliant. we tend to look at the score sheet and go like, well, he doesn't have this. And then you watch the game, you go, he has the puck every time he's out on the ice. All kinds of scoring chances. The Ravensburgen, the goaltender for Prince George, was excellent. And I would imagine that Colby, he wants to score. He wants to contribute offensively. But I would imagine, without having seen Oshawa play, that he's probably doing some positive things to help that team, win games.
Greg, I just want to get your thought on the idea of ice time management. We saw it with the Sharks where they're resting a young guy. Here in Manitoba with Chaz Lucius, who's the 2021 first rounder. He's a prospect. He's looked really good in camp. His skating looks excellent. Of course, he had the surgery on his ankle last year. But the Moose seem to be slowly getting him back. And he didn't play him last week in Iowa for the first couple of games. They played him for the first game last night in Grand Rapids. We'll see if he goes in the rematch tonight. But it just seems to be a smart decision. But it seems to be one that's kind of a little bit out there for hockey, is getting these guys to maximize them so you don't do some long-term damage to get some short-term gain.
Absolutely, Dave. And I think with Chaz's injury history, there's also that. So, and certainly you draft a player in the first round, and Chaz has ability and talent. We know that. But now what you're trying to do, coming off the ankle surgery, you want to make sure that a player is not only healthy, but ready to get back in, because there's a difference between rehabbing an injury and healing an injury, and then stepping back into the lineup and being ready to play, because the level of play is high. And so you have to be very cognizant when you put a player back in. Yeah, his injury may be healed, but is he ready to get in, and is he ready to take on the demands and the rigors of playing, so that you don't put him at risk? Because you might put the player at risk of something else, and maybe a different type of injury because you're not in game shape. So again, managing that, working with the player to help him understand. Okay, listen, you're going to play game one here. You might not play game two, but ultimately what we're trying to do is get you into a place where you're going to be able to play all the games and be confident and be ready to do it. And I think for Chaz, that's really important for him. And other players, to your point, Dave, other teams, we saw it last year with Leo Carlson in Anaheim. Hatton Verbeek was very open. He's not going to play every game, period. And Pat even went one step further. He said, we're not going to rob our home fans of him. He won't play back-to-backs on the road. He might not play the third game in 4 days on the road. We're not going to rob our fans at home. You're going to see Leo. And so you manage him. He plays at home. He can do some other things on the road. Bob Gainey used to tell the young players, and he used to tell our coaches when he was managing our team in Dallas, he used to say, the game looks really easy from the press box. And sometimes you need to see how easy it looks by being in the press box. Don't look at it as a negative. And I think that, it's not just saying you're not going to play. You got to get in there and learn and grow. And I think for Chaz, and people say, "Oh yeah, you're just a Jets supporter," and I like the Jets and I like the people of Jets. But when I talk about what a terrific job they do and what since the day they got the franchise back in 2011 with Mark Chipman and Kevin Shoveldayoff and the group they have in there, I think that they're a model for doing things right in the National Hockey League, from drafting, from development, from taking situations, valuing their players, making moves. I really do. I have great admiration for the work they do. And certainly, in my view, they have good people. But Dave, it's just another example of doing what they believe is right.
Last question for you, Craig. You talk about great admiration. There's great admiration in Winnipeg for Brian Little, and he's going to get that acknowledgement tomorrow afternoon, signing a one-day contract to retire as a member of the Winnipeg Jets. Just, a memory or two, that you have of Brian Little, tracking his career from his time in Barrie through Atlanta to the untimely end here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, when you think about Brian, right, and Brian was what I would call a warrior, he had skill, but when you watched him play, and going all the way back to junior hockey, watching him play in Barrie, he was getting right in the thick of things, and he had skill. Don't get me wrong, he had skill. He could shoot the puck. He could handle it. He could make plays, but he had a warrior mentality. He really did. And, we all know that Brian wasn't the biggest of players, but you knew that you were going to get a great effort and from Brian Little when he was on the ice. His determination had no limits. I mean, he always wanted to try to find a way to get through resistance, to find a way to help the team win. And, when I just think of Brian as somebody, and again, I ask myself this, and it's a little bit different with what I do now than when I was with an NHL team in terms of scouting. The first question I would ask myself, when I still ask myself this, but it's a little bit different, because when you're with a team, you can just say, that player doesn't fit for us. What I do now in the scouting, I'm trying to give a picture of the players, and so I'm giving a picture of all the players. I'm not saying he doesn't fit because I'm not with a team. But when I was with teams, the first question is, can you win with them? Can you win with this player? There was never, ever a doubt with Brian Little that you could not win, that wasn't the case, that the answer was always yes. And that, to me, is the type of player that you want on your team.
Craig Button, TSN Director of Scouting, analyst on TSN Jets broadcast. Thanks again for joining us this morning.
You heard it here first. Gavin McKenna is still good.
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, he's good.
He might go first overall, right, Craig?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, he should, but I'll tell you what, there's a heck of a player playing in Windsor that's going to be in that draft. His name is Ethan Belchetz, and he's 6'5" in skill. Now listen, McKenna's brilliant. I'm just saying that just keep that name in mind. That he's a really good player. I don't think he can. I don't see him as being capable of unseating Gavin, but we're looking at a pretty good draft in 2026.
Well, the first Craig's list is, I'm sure, in works or soon to be released, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There you go. Something to look forward to. Craig, thank you. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
You too, Craig. great friend of ours, Craig Button, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. He's the best. I mean, what can we say about Craig? He joins us for so many years in a row now, and he always brings great insight, and it's great to see him on the broadcasts with Sarah again as well.
I was talking to Sarah about that yesterday. She's back in the fold.
Yeah,
back in business.
It's great to adds another element of quality to the TSN.
I kept telling her to give
podcast.
us more icy shoutouts on it, but she said,
yeah, and
how did
she
you get in
says,
here?
"Who are you and why are you here?" And it's it's a good back and forth. It's the banter that we all enjoy and love. Big thanks to Craig Button. Big thanks to Murat Atesh for joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Was the dog that Murat was house sitting? Was it Pogo or Poco?
I think Poco.
Poco.
Poco too.
It
I
came
don't
across
think it was like a
as
pogo stick, but whatever.
Poco's
whatever
a big girl.
Poco is.
We already did the sorry, T Cone Paul is asking. We already did a Moose Minute yesterday. I will do a quick prospect roundup, Drew. A very quick one if you'll.
Why don't you do it tomorrow? Tomorrow on the post game
because there'll
show.
be a whole new one tomorrow. I'm just gonna say quickly. Zach Naring, who we haven't paid a lot of attention to, 2023 third rounder, Western Michigan. He had 2 goals, 1 assist. He's off to a good start in the college hockey. And of course, like I said, Colby Barlow, Braden Yeager, and Marcus Lupinen over in Victoria as he scored his 2nd goal of the season in cueing the comeback for the Royals. And so that's and Kevin He, for the first time, got held off the score sheet in his first game. So he is now 2nd in OHL scoring, but he is a very exciting prospect and one I'm sure Jets fans are going to be very excited to watch.
There's the Dave Minuk Prospect Report. Big thanks to our sponsors, Play Now, the title sponsor of our programming, our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Maddie Smith there tonight. 2 shows, 7:15 and 9:45. Holt Dental, City Place. We'll be there on Monday, October 28th, getting you set for the Jets and the Maple Leafs. That's a noon hour show. So spend your lunch hour with us at City Place. Boston Pizza and Seagram support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. In case you missed any of the show, the instant replay is available on the YouTube channel. The podcast will be up shortly as well. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, and leave us feedback here, there, and everywhere. We want to hear what you have to think about our program. We're next in action tomorrow after the Jets and the Penguins, right around 4:30, 4:45, somewhere in that vicinity for the Illegal Curve post-game show. IllegalCurve.com will have all your latest Winnipeg Jets and Manitoba Moose news and audio. The Jets practice in 1 hour time, so stay tuned to the website for everything coming out of Jets practice. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Thanks for joining us, everybody. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.